Today's episode is being brought to you by Eagle Financial Group. From fractional CIO to tax prep and everything in between, Eagle Financial Group can help. Find them on the web at eaglefsg.com.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians to overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be. Visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com because you're not in this alone. And don't forget that CME credit is available when you listen with us. Just look for CMFI in the show notes to learn how. My guest today has board certifications in both family medicine and lifestyle medicine. She's also a successful entrepreneur and has recently launched a new dating app that specifically targets medical professionals. So let's hear Dr. Chrystene Nguyen tell her story. We're going to have some fun today. I'm having a conversation with Dr. Chrystene Nguyen out in sunny California, who has some really interesting things to tell us about in terms of adventures with social media that she's going to tell us about. So, Chrystene, thanks so much for being with us today. I'm really excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be a guest on your podcast.
Well, you're very kind. Well, as we always do, we like to begin at the beginning. And interestingly, your beginning was actually on another continent. So tell us a little bit about the earliest part of your life.
Yeah, so I was born in Vietnam, and I came to the United States when I was about 6 years old, and I was part of the boat wave for Vietnamese refugees. And so thankfully, my very large family, we're talking like a family with 8 children, we made it to the United States. And at that time, the family was smaller, and, a couple of my siblings came after the fact. But, I'm very just thankful and grateful for the life that I have, and just being part of this American dream. Yeah.
And this was, and I apologize for the interruption, but this was about how long after the end of the war?
Oh my gosh, it's been so long ago. It was, I can't say exactly, but It was probably now I have to really dig deep on doing the history lesson here.
Well, I apologize for not having done the research on it myself, but I know, of course, at the moment that the war ended, there was a scramble for people, particularly who were trying to escape the South. But it's my understanding that later on, there was another wave of migration. And I was just kind of curious as to where all that fit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, there were different waves for sure. And I was part of the wave of the boat people. And so my family ended up in Malaysia. And it took about a year for us to finally make it to the United States. Our life began here, and, all the hopes and dreams that my parents had for us became realized. And so I'm always appreciative of that. And so, I never, or at least I try my best. I forget sometimes to take things for granted.
So your first language was actually Vietnamese?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I started kindergarten here.
And when you got to this country, you didn't speak a word of English? Was that the way it was?
Well, they tried to teach us a little bit when we were in Malaysia because we were there for a whole year.
I see.
And so we actually did have education. And my father, he was a principal of an all women's high school in Vietnam. Uh-huh. And so he was a teacher for us, along with other teachers who helped teach us.
Well, that's a lucky thing for you.
Yeah, thankfully.
But it's always been fascinating to me that people, when they're very young, seem to acquire languages much earlier, and I actually had a previous guest of mine was born in Cuba, grew up speaking Spanish in New York, and was sent to first grade without any attempted instruction in English, and yet she did very well. So back to you. I want to get the focus back on you. That transition into an English-speaking world. Do you recall finding it challenging or difficult or threatening, or what was it like for you?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. But then again, that was like so long ago. And basically, we were all under the ESL, the English as a Second Language program.
Mm-hmm.
And, and like you mentioned, as children, we have the ability to pick up language a lot quicker. Actually, we have the ability to pick up a lot of skills a lot quicker as children. And so thankfully, we're able to sort of, be part of the American culture in a very quick amount of time. And if anything, after a while, I think it actually frustrated my parents because we ended up just speaking English at home a lot to one another, as in my siblings. And so it was only to our parents or our relatives when, there were family get-togethers where the Vietnamese was spoken because I think maybe we just got excited and, just being in school and having friends. And so if anything, that was something that I actively had to work on, was retaining my Vietnamese language abilities.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And did your father continue in his career as a teacher, or did he move into something else?
Yeah. And so, obviously it's very different when you come here and, he ended up, just starting all over again, like most of, the refugees. And he initially worked, as an employee in an auto body shop that he ultimately, ended up buying the business.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And my mom, like a lot of the refugee women, she, was sewing clothes and then ultimately, and I think this, now just you asking me this question kind of got me thinking about my trajectory, that my parents ended up buying like a little mini mart on top of the auto body shop.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that was their business when I was growing up. So during the day, my mom would run like the little mini mart and my dad would be at the auto body shop. And then in the evening, he would come and join her. And so, they obviously worked really hard to support, a large family of 8 children. And I was there helping them as well, when I could at the mini mart.
And so in this fascinating transition into a completely different culture and acquiring new language and new skills and things of that nature, I'm wondering at what point in your early years you began to think about a career in medicine.
So medicine was something that, being that I'm Vietnamese and my parents, and the way they view medicine and being a physician was probably like the highest honor that any Vietnamese or Asian family could ever have for their children. And so this was something that I actually rebelled against.
Did you really?
Yeah, because this is something that I was just literally rolling my eyes all the time, whenever they talked about it.
So they were giving you you should go to medical school and you were giving them the, wait a minute, this is my decision. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like the guilt trip, I felt like, like that, we brought you here for a reason, and so, it's funny, again, just how life happens. And so I think it was because, being young and, in my teenage years and my early 20s, at that time, just naturally, I want to just rebel because that's what they wanted for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually started my undergraduate studies at UCLA as a civil engineer major.
No kidding.
Yes, I did. That didn't last long though.
Yeah.
Because I was good and, I was good in math and in high school. And, I grew up in Santa Ana, which is a community where, very low socioeconomic status was where I grew up. And it's not like the students around here weren't smart or, didn't have intelligence or ambition, but I think it was just the unfortunate nature of the situation where they weren't given enough resources and support.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was very thankful that for my parents, they worked really hard. And so it was very much drilled in me that basically they do their part and we need to do our part, And so I was very focused on my studies. And so I excelled. And I actually did very well. In high school, I was actually co-valedictorian. And so when I went to college and I was like, this is not going to be a problem. But, we're talking about like the creme de la creme, so to speak, at UCLA. And when I started taking these math classes, I started getting B's. And I was very upset by that. Like, I don't get B's. It was just that
Who's in charge
competitiveness
here?
in me, But then I was like, why am I doing this? It was because I wanted to rebel. And then I started to do some volunteer work and then realized that, this is something that I wanted to do, that medicine was actually very fascinating. And it was totally in line of how I see myself. And so it all worked out really well because at the end of the day, as much as I want to say the parents gave me a very big nudge, that I'm very thankful for them that they did that and just helped me to sort of be able to recognize the true path and my true calling in life.
I bet that made them happy.
Yeah, and they were. Yeah, and I needed to do it for me because there were so many situations that I've heard about where some physicians did it for their parents, for other people, and they ended up very unhappy. And that at the end of the day, this is, you can't do this for anyone else but yourself.
Today's episode is brought to you by Eagle Financial Group. Eagle Financial Group is here to help you understand your numbers and to make wise decisions. Whether it's fractional CFO services, accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, or tax strategies and preparation, Eagle Financial Group is your partner to ensure that your practice keeps on serving your patients and gives you more time to spend with your family and friends. It's time that you overcome your obstacles and get control of your financial life today. Give Eagle Financial Group a call at 719-755-0043. Drop us an email at clientservices@eaglefsg.com or visit us online at eaglefsg.com. We are a proud sponsor of the MD Coaches family of podcasts.
I want to go ahead and move us into where you are now. And I know that you had a number of different practice situations in internal medicine, I guess, or family medicine. That's actually
Family
where
medicine.
you did your postgraduate training. It looks like you had a number of different opportunities there. Sort of moved around a little bit before you happened onto something that really fascinated you in a different way, which is how should I put this? It sounds like you noticed something about the lifestyle of young physicians that was lacking in one way or another. So why don't you pick up the story from there?
Yeah. So, none of this was none of this was ever planned. Like I just never anticipate any of this. And when you had talked about me in the beginning and talked about social media, and if you asked a lot of my friends, like I was someone who was never really into social media. Like I barely even posted in social media.
Really?
Yeah. And that was, several years ago. And now I'm, all
Kind of
over the
unusual
place.
for your age
Exactly.
demographic. Yeah.
Yeah. And so really, what we're getting at is like all this came about and, my entrepreneurial journey sort of started was really because of COVID. Unfortunately, when COVID happened.
Boy, that changed a lot of
world,
lives, didn't it?
Certainly, yes. The whole world was turned upside down.
Yeah.
We all recognized the fragility of life. We really, I think, really had to really figure out and really, figure out what is truly important to us, to each one of us. And at the end of the day, it was the relationships. It was the social connections. It was the community. And so when that happened, we were in quarantine in 2020. And at that time, I had switched from doing primary care to urgent care, like literally like the year before. And so I was working in this setting with high risk for exposure for COVID. and I purposely isolated myself from my family. And after a while, when things started opening up and, some people started hanging out, a lot of my friends didn't feel comfortable hanging around me. And I understood, because of my high risk.
Because of your work environment?
Yes, high risk for COVID exposure. And I joke about like having the COVID cooties and so forth. And and so naturally the friends that, were most comfortable like spending time with me were the friends who do what I do, friends who were in healthcare. And so, these communities started forming on Facebook, and a lot of us were connecting virtually because we just needed some kind of support and community. And so I decided to form the White Coat Romance Facebook group. And this was a Facebook group that was for, it was just only for a number of, high-level healthcare professional degrees, including physicians, dentists, pharmacists, optometrists, podiatrists, and veterinarians. At that time I started, it was a larger community, but over time I had decided to kind of scale it back down and reduce it to smaller community because, there were a lot of other professionals that were interested in joining, but, I only have, unfortunately, due to my limitations and so much bandwidth, that I decided to keep this to become a smaller community. And it was a really amazing space where we could come together, provide support, a lot of amazing friendships formed. We even had, some actually a good number of romantic connections. I would do all sorts of fun events. We would do Zoom events of various types. And then after a while, we actually started hanging out in real life. And where I'm at in Southern California, I was able to plan a number of events in the area. And so it was just really amazing just be able to finally meet, all these new friends. And
so now I apologize for the interruption, but you've really fascinated me here. You apparently vetted this thing very carefully
yes.
very sharply. And I want some details. I mean, what did you have to do to get into this group? Did you have to submit your licenses and photographs and things of this nature? How did you do it?
Yeah, and certainly like safety is a concern. I wanted this to be a safe space for us. And so for the Facebook group, there were a couple questions that you have to answer in order to join the community. And that includes, like something like your NPI or your license number and just a few questions of where you practice. Yeah. And your specialty and yeah. And I'm pretty like tough on that, that, for me, it wasn't having like a big, large community.
It's so different from the usual Facebook happening where you're trying to get it to be as big as it can possibly be. So congrats to you on that. But go ahead with the story, and I apologize for the interruption.
Yeah, no, it's good. And so I wanted a community that was vetted because I wanted to create something different,
Yeah.
Because really what I'm saying is all of this really was born out of a need. And from there, I was getting a lot of, healthcare professionals that were interested in wanting to be part of this White Coat Romance community. But, I was limited in my ability and what I can manage. And, plus I'm still working as a physician. And so then also, there were actually a lot of people that actually wanted me to be like a matchmaker and would ask me about, this person and that person, and they have various interests. And, everyone has different interests and, understandably. And so I decided to expand this community and with the help of develop the White Coat Romance dating app. And the dating app actually took quite a while to actually launch because I don't know what I'm doing and I'm like learning along the way. And so it didn't launch until actually February of this year in the United States. And then I expanded to Canada at the end of March.
And I'm thinking that's a fairly complicated project. Did you have to connect with software developers and things of this nature to be able to put it together?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, my brother-in-law, who has an IT background, was helping me with this for a little while. But, COVID certainly played a role in, all this, whether it was with him or the developer, ultimately that I'm currently with, because, the waves of COVID really affected the project as well. yeah. And then, he and I recognized that, we need a team of people to be able to, to launch something of this scale. And so that's when, I brought in the developer and we were able to like move forward. And so I'm really excited because the White Coat Romance dating app has a much larger community. So it also includes masters as well as doctorate degrees, as well as like PhD friends. So pretty much, if you're a professional who's in healthcare or health related fields, as well as students who are pursuing these degrees, that this is, part of the community that I've built. And so it's been very exciting to see like all these different matches, whether it's through the dating app or actually even the Facebook group as well, because we're actually going from the Facebook group, we're going on the 4th marriage now. Super exciting, as well as another couple that has like a baby, and they basically had a blended family with a baby as well. So it just really warms my heart. It makes me really happy that, despite like all the tragedies and of COVID, but this was truly our silver lining.
Yeah, I bet that really is gratifying for you. And tell me a little bit more now about how this morphed into White Coat Mingle and what's the difference?
Yeah, and so White Coat Mingle, again, like really like I think, as I'm just deeply involved in White Coat Romance and, and all the different like subgroups. We also have a lot of subgroups as well, especially our SoCal subgroup that's really quite strong. And that, I'm constantly talking to a lot of members of the community and trying to understand their needs and their pain points. And ultimately, I think people were craving like in-person connections, human connections. And we were basically in quarantine for so long, so that now that we're, have the opportunity to live our life again, that people wanted to meet even more professionals. Mm-hmm. And so, and I also have a lot of friends as well that I think are completely amazing. And so I decided to form another sister group called White Coat Mingle. And so White Coat Mingle is, essentially it's an exclusive platform for social networking across, all industries. And it's still a niche audience, meaning that it's for like-minded professionals with master's and doctorate degrees, but it's for a much larger community. And we just had our first launch event about 2.5 weeks ago. It was a huge success. It was so much fun. And I'm in the process of planning more events. Currently, it's, just in Southern California where I'm at right now, but I'm really hoping to be able to expand it to other big cities if there's interest and if I can get the support and the help to plan in other big cities. So I'm very excited about this new endeavor.
I bet you're going to find right away that there is a bigger interest than you might have imagined, because it just really seems like a brilliant idea. And so in addition to all of those things, you're actually producing your own podcast to help publicize this. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So this actually was also, another
and I like love another the name
thing
of this.
That thank you so much. And it wasn't planned at all. And so, I'm very thankful to to get to know a lot of the members of the White Coat Romance community. And one of those members is now, a really good friend and is co-host of this podcast that we have now that you mentioned. It's called Love, Scrubs, and Stories. And he lives in the local area, is another physician. Shout out to Dr. Colin Zhu, my co-host. Amazing. And so, he and he's, an entrepreneur himself and is doing amazing work. And because we're entrepreneurs and just trying to understand this journey and provide support to one another, that we're always just, we chat every now and then and throw ideas to one another. And so he actually one day just happened to hey, we should have a podcast and it would be fun to have a banter. And at the same time, in the Facebook group, we talk about a lot of different topics, obviously surrounding, dating and relationships and romance. And someone had mentioned that, there's just a lot of stories to be told, among this amazing community.
Indeed.
And so, Yeah, when Colin initially mentioned it, I'm like, oh, we have so much going on, not right now. And I ultimately circled back to him and said, remember what you said to me? Let's do it, And I got really excited. He was really excited. And so we launched this podcast, beginning of July. We're now going almost, the 19th, 20th episode. And so we have guests, whether they're from the white coat romance community or from the larger community of professionals, or also even non-healthcare guests and guest expert as well, that can provide us some insight and education to this community. And basically, we just talk about all things that's related to dating and relationships from the perspective of healthcare professionals. And I think that, we wanted to amplify the voices of healthcare professionals and also to bring back the human aspect of who we are, and that we have the same desires as everyone else. And so I think a lot of times, patients and, other people may view, I don't know, sometimes it gets the feeling like it feels like they think we're like robots,
Yeah.
But like everybody else,
yeah.
we have needs, we have emotions, we have desires, we have wants. And at the end of the day, what we all want, like everybody else, is we want that person in our life, person to do life with ultimately.
Yeah. You have really hit on something that I think has probably been missing from the larger healthcare community since its beginning, and that is that we've been kind of isolated. People think we're somehow different and that we don't feel and think and experience in the way that any normal human being would. So what a discovery for you, and what a fabulous way to approach it. I am curious. I have to say, you have so many things going on here, and you did briefly allude to it just a few minutes ago. Do you find that you're challenged in being able to continue to get out there and practice medicine?
Oh gosh, absolutely. Yeah. And so this is a struggle for me because, I think this is something I tend to get ahead of myself, not new at all. It's interesting when you had talked about my family and stuff. And what I didn't mention was I remember like growing up thinking like, I didn't want to be like my parents. I'm embarrassed to say that, in a sense of their entrepreneurial pursuits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And businesses, because this is like, like growing up, I was so young and I was like, this is so much work, like, why are they doing this? And, and now I understand. And I guess it's in me,
Yeah.
the entrepreneur genes. And here I am. Like, I just never thought I'd be here in this place, but it's certainly a struggle and a challenge. And, I still very much like practicing as a physician, and I do it, but I certainly have had to like cut back to part-time practicing and, as an urgent care physician. Yeah. And so it's something that, I'm figuring out day by day at, what point, and, people have often asked me like, will you ever give up being a physician? And right now I'm going to say no to that, but, who knows where everything is going to take me down the road and where all this will go, because I'm very excited. And I think at the end of the day, like what it is that I really want is that essentially like we're talking about serving patients, serving others, right? And I could be serving this community just in a different aspect, right? Because at the end of the day, like we often forget that optimal health, like as I mentioned, includes having like positive relationships and social connections and community.
You're in a territory right now that I'd really like for you to enlarge on. And I think you mentioned that you did some additional study and additional training in lifestyle medicine, which is something that we'd certainly not heard of the time back when the earth was cooling and I was finishing my training. Nobody had heard of lifestyle medicine. But talk a little bit about why that's important and how you got interested.
Again, this, really all came out of COVID. Like I actually didn't even know lifestyle medicine existed. It sounds kind of, I don't know if I want to say a little woo-woo when you first hear about it, when you don't understand anything about it. But I thankfully joined a community, a leverage and growth accelerator, which I attribute a lot of where my growth and mindset shift came from. And this all happened because of COVID. And there were a number of physicians in that community that were board certified in lifestyle medicine. And it really piqued my interest, because certainly as I mentioned, I felt very strongly about preventive medicine. And so when I started learning about it, I was like, this really falls in line of something that, I would like to do, because essentially lifestyle medicine, we're really just going back to the basics of medicine, right? That a lot of us forget in this day and age, right? A lot of it is to help educate patients and focus on like the major pillars of medicine, which is optimal diet, right? Predominantly plant-based, also eliminating any exposure to toxic substances, maximizing our sleep, getting adequate exercise, reducing our stress, as well as having positive, community and social connections.
A mentor of mine from a long time ago was fond of saying, we don't actually have a healthcare system in the U.S., we have a disease care system. And it sounds like what you're focusing on in lifestyle is exactly that. Let's have a healthcare system. Am I correct?
Yeah. And lifestyle, the goal of lifestyle medicine is to prevent and to reverse largely like a lot of the chronic medical conditions such as diabetes and hypertension. And a lot of that could be prevented and reversed with lifestyle measures. And so, nowadays, like it just feels like there's a pill for every ill. And we forget, and I understand part of it is certainly, I think as physicians, like it's really challenging the work that we do, and we're limited on time, and also our patients as well, and sort of like where their interests lie. But really we can help patients work towards that. And, certainly this is not something that can happen overnight, but if we can focus on that I feel like, and focus on the long-term, healthcare plan, that we're all would be in a much better place.
I bet you're right. Chrystene, I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I bet we could literally go on and on for hours and hours, but chances are we might lose some listeners here and there. So what I'm going to do at this point is get out of your way, and let's do what we came here for, and that is to hear from you and you alone. So I'm going to close my mic, and audience, Dr. Chrystene Nguyen is going to give us her personal prescriptions for success.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this question. I've really given this a lot of thought, and I would say the top 3 things that I can think of that has really helped me, and certainly my prescription for success, is starting with number 1. I say, feel your journey with passion and purpose. So starting your, say entrepreneur journey, your adventure is like setting sail on an exciting romantic journey. It all begins with a burning passion for your vision and a crystal clear sense of purpose. So your passion, I would say, it's the spark that fuels your motivation, while your purpose serves as your guiding North Star. So embrace the passion, and this, let it drive every step that you take. And this purpose will give your entrepreneurial pursuits profound and meaningful direction, making this journey all the more fulfilling. So that's my number 1. Number 2, I would say, is understand your community. The heartbeat of any successful venture lies in like understanding the needs and the pain points of your community, to deliver value, to solve their real problems. And it's important that you listen, you learn, you seek feedback, as well as grow with the audience and continue to expand the knowledge, and just surround yourself with a strong network of individuals who not only provide value advice, but also will help support your growth. And then lastly, I would say conquer the fear of starting. Just take that first step. As physicians, we're often wired to like analyze and research endlessly and, fearing the unknown. But, success doesn't come from standing still. It's really born out of action. I say don't get bogged down from the how right now, but instead focus on the what and the why. And by taking that initial step, it makes it easier to take the next step and gives you the courage to move forward. The ideas will evolve, and you'll learn along the way. You won't have all the answers, at the outset, but, that's totally okay. And the how will become clearer as you go. Just keep moving forward, and each step will get a little bit easier. Ultimately, embrace the uncertainty, seize every opportunity, and I feel like you'll create something beautiful and life-changing. And those are my 3 prescriptions for success.
Wow. That is really powerful. Be passionate about your purpose, understand your community. And I love that last one. Don't fear the first step, because that gets in the way of so many things. Chrystene, this has been a lot of fun. I'm overwhelmed with the wisdom of such a young person, and I applaud you for what you've done and wish you great success and where you're headed. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to tell our audience where you can be found and where the apps can be found and anything else that you'd like to share. So go right ahead.
Oh, thank you so much, Randy, for your very kind words. It really touches me to hear all that. I really thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. You're so warm, and it's so easy to have this conversation with you. And I think you really helped me bring out a lot of the things that I perhaps may have bottled up. And so I appreciate that.
Thank you
a
so
lot.
much.
And so thank you so much. And so, yes, you can find me on social media. I don't know, annoyingly or not, depending on how you feel about it, everywhere nowadays. And that's really, I guess that's the other part of success, is that you have to really put yourself out there. So you can certainly find me, Chrystene Nguyen, my name, on all the major social media channels. I'm on Facebook a lot, as well as Instagram, also on LinkedIn. I've kind of dabbled into TikTok a little bit and Twitter. As far as the White Coat Romance dating app, if you're single, healthcare, health-related professional with a master's or doctorate degree, or a student, please, you can find us on the App Store as well as Google Play. You can also visit our website at whitecoatromance.com, and the social media handles are all the same as White Coat Romance. If you're in the local area in Southern California currently, come join White Coat Mingle events. They're a lot of fun. And last but not least, we'd love it if you can also tune into the podcast, Love, Scrubs, and Stories, that I co-host with Dr. Colin Zhu. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'm very thankful to be able to share my story. And thank you again, Randy, and to the RX for Success podcast family.
Well, thank you so much, Chrystene, for being with us on RX for Success. You have been a charming guest, and I have enjoyed every minute of it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. If you enjoyed the show, you can help us reach more listeners by leaving a rating and a review, especially on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if your app doesn't have that option, just leave us an email or a voicemail through SpeakPipe at www.rxforsuccesspodcast.com. You can also help by becoming a Patreon member. That link is in the show notes. And we hope you'll also follow our companion podcast, Life-Changing Moments with Dr. Dale Waxman. Special thanks to our producer, Craig Clausen, our promotions manager, Mariana Rodabaugh, and to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music. And remember, be sure to fill your prescription for success with my next episode.
Today's episode was brought to you by Eagle Financial Group. From fractional CIO to tax prep and everything in between, Eagle Financial Group can help. Find them on the web at eaglefsg.com.